To think about the medicine wheel, we we have to understand that everything that is here and is represented in this image, in this vision, is really a roadmap for how we are to live, how we are to live in society, in community, in village, in family, and how to do that in a good way. The medicine wheel begins, we look at the East as our beginning again season. We look at the East and we celebrate that in the spring equinox when we come to ceremony and we honor the four directions and we find and we see our place where we are now in the journey. This is just a template. This is a roadmap. And, you know, just from pure posture of interpreting the colors in an agricultural way, the yellow is going to bring us into the east. This is kind of where we are on the journey in into an annual processing of all of the directions and all of the meaning. We begin in the east, so we would hold it this way. And this is about where we are in our movement right now. Spring equinox was a little over a month ago, maybe for 5, 6 weeks now. And then the actual movement um, from the view of the universe and how all of this integrates into our own personal life, you know, from our physical perspective, we are born, whether or not we were born on the coldest day of the year, we were born into a new season relative to our specificity. We can have a birthday in December, but that does not mean we have to look at all of that and say it begins in the East. It begins at the spring equinox ceremony. This is where we come to celebrate a time and a season and a place of renewal. That's what the focus is. And the hope is for our spring equinox ceremony is that we come to a time where all that we have collected prayerfully, energetically, physically, through the process of a year, which begins here at the spring equinox and carries us finally all the way through the winter solstice. The color is yellow. We include all of the colors of humankind, which reminds us then of the prophecy of Crazy Horse. I want you to see how all this by intention and by vision and by design all fits together in a very nicely formed formula, if you will, of what we could say this is what we do. This is how we live. Um, so as of now, we're in a series of renewal. So the season that we are experiencing now is the transition from the spring up until June 20th, which is going to be the summer solstice, fall equinox, winter solstice, and then that brings us through to the next phase of the circle, which is going to be the beginning of the new year. That make sense to everyone so far? We have to understand this before we can even begin to think about anything that we can add to this. We just have to look at the abstract image of what the medicine wheel looks like and what it reminds us of and what it shows us in how we behave and how we live on a day in and day in basis, and how we celebrate that with our relatives, our family, our community, and how, even through just a simple thing is showing one a nice compact format or explanation of who we are and what we do, right? And how we live this medicine way. People talk about the good red road. Well, this progress is a progression of what we consider the good red road. Sometimes we don't talk about the fact that it's red. That doesn't have anything to do with the color on the medicine wheel. It's just what has been commonly called this medicine way, this native way of thinking, of perceiving the world and interacting with the world. And we do that with ourselves, we do that with our friends, with our community, with our family, and most of all, let us never forget our interaction with the sacred Mother Earth. But on the medicine wheel, we have to see that there are 4 directions that are cardinal directions. We have east, south, west, and north. Those are the 4 cardinal directions. And then we have 3 more. We call those the ordinal directions. And that is above, below, and within. So when we combine the visual of that, when we create an image that demonstrates that cycle of life, and we can identify any place where we are in our journey by what's going on in our life. For example, if we're at a time of rest, at a time of calmness, a time of feeling of being renewed, that's happening in the eastern quadrant. Now we can have something over here that is very, very warm and very pleasing to the senses and to our understanding of how the big picture of all of this fits in. And then we may get the news that someone very dear to us crossed over to the spirit world. Now we're existing in 2 realms, you see. We're existing in the eastern realm, but all of a sudden we're experiencing the emotion of the darkness of the West. So it's the wheel is everything. The wheel encompasses everything. And we can pretty much examine where we are in our lives by looking at what's going on. Are we troubled? Are we happy? Are we at peace? Do we feel we need something? Do we feel safe? And we can always bring it back to these colors on the medicine wheel when we sit and pray, Creator, I know that springtime is out there and everything is becoming new, but I got this little stone in my shoe over here that when I walk through the dark valley of crisis and chaos, it hurts a little bit. But I'm still over here in the physical sense of being born again. So it helps us by giving us an evaluation tool to kind of check in with ourselves when things are going on around us where we say, well, where am I on the wheel? What's going on in my life? And that used as a tool will help us then engage in those ordinal directions. And with each one of these directions, the total is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Every one of them follows and brings us back to that center of above and below. And when you are at that place within you, and I am at that place within me, then we meet in the center, is where our hearts are joined as one. So the teaching that is associated with the East is going to be humility. That's where it begins. We'll talk a little bit about humility. Today, I think we're just trying to establish a good foundation of how we're going to move forward and how we honor Maria and other relatives who said, I'd like to know more about this. I'd like to learn more about that. And here we are making that happen. But the yellow is the season of the east, the red is the season of the south. There is no accident about the color or the arrangement. If we begin in the east, everything is fresh and new. Then we move to the south, where this is a place of our maturing. I mean, you can even look at this in terms of our own chronological development. You know, we start in a place of innocence when we are first born and begin this journey in the human family. And then we become toddlers, we become little children, which is a place and time where we begin to grow, our thoughts begin to form, our perspectives of things begin to get clearer. And this is a place then of maturity, when we move from a place of the innocence of childhood to begin recognizing and seeing what is our social and moral and spiritual obligation to ourselves, to our family, to our community, and to the whole world. You will notice, and those of you who've been with us for a while, you know, we're not here about any approach or theology, doctrine or dogma. It's just interpreting and getting in right relationship with one another, with our family, with our relatives, and with the natural world. All that's occurring while we're in the season of the South. Now, some of us who are a little bit older have moved in the dark season. We moved into, you know, my relatives have explained it to me that when we move into the West, we move to a place where there is darkness. The sun has set here, and we move towards daylight. Just another way of looking at how the medicine wheel informs our interpretation and our participation with nature and the natural world. This is considered a season of chaos and confusion. And it is in the South, then, that we learn the traits and our commitments to live a life of responsibility. All that's part of our moral and spiritual maturing. And then when we move into the season of the West, that takes great courage to walk through the valley of shadow of death. It takes great courage to walk into the unknown. It creates great courage and a good flashlight to walk through the darkness. And what we are pulling together here when we begin to come to that point where we have that aha moment, and we say, oh, now I see how all this fits together. So we need a great courage and we need a good flashlight to walk through the chaos and the confusion of the darkness, and it's going to come. As I said earlier, we may be celebrating a birthday over here, and over here we may get the bad news that a friend has gone to the spirit realm. Then we move to the north. These are our elder years. These are our wisdom years. This is the place when we talk about our friends who sit in the east, south, west, and north. These is where this is where our elders reside and sit. They've walked the bigger journey, and they're coming into their final, chapters of our lives. And that's where we pass on then the next of the 7 sacred teachings, which is respect. We're reminded to respect our elders. We're reminded to speak, to um, to preserve and protect our community, our family, our relatives. Then from there, we move to the um, ordinal directions, which is above, taking us now into the spirit realm, above, below, which again has to do with the roots that are growing from the tree that is us and who we are. This is where the roots are formed. And below, into that subsurface of the spiritual nature and the heart of the reality of the natural world and our ability to participate and cooperate and engage in a good way. So then below is the season of above, below, and then if we follow all that together, the 7 sacred teachings, when we move to truth, we come to a place in the south of wisdom, and then we come to that center, that centeredness. And that all fits and falls back in line with what Crazy Horse prophesied and the very vision on which this church is founded. All of this fits into a final visual of what that looks like. The heart of the 7th generation Native American church is understanding these things and being able to use this visual as a mental, spiritual, and emotional reminder of where we are and what's going on in our life. If we're riding down the road and the road is bumpy, we figure out something's going on with the tires, something's going on with the wheel. It's out of balance somewhere. And it's going to be a rough and troublesome road if we continue to ride the bicycle down the bumpy way, right? So we have to find the balance in all this. And when we are beginning to see the full picture of what the visual image of the medicine wheel looks like, when we begin to understand what each quadrant means, new beginning, maturity, our elder years, and then our spirit years. It's when we find our lives a little bumpy, and we have to sit back and ask ourselves, well, what's going on here? What's out of balance? Which spoke is a little longer or shorter than it needs to be? And what adjustments do I need to make? More often than not, when I find myself in a place of trouble or distress, when I look at the whole big picture, that brings me straight over to here. When I can step back from something and I can breathe and relax into it, become mindful and be cooperative with what I'm being challenged for in my new beginnings. But it's also for me too, the West is kind of a scary place because I don't always know what to do when it's dark. And sometimes I don't always carry a good flashlight. So that's part of the medicine, what we need to learn about how to navigate ourselves. You know? And all of this, that image right there is every piece of it fits together to me, is more than a flashlight. It's like a floodlight. And if you've ever seen a train coming down the track at night, the locomotive's main light is sweeping left and right, moving left and right, which enhances our ability to be able to see the obstacles in the darkness. So the medicine wheel, by the virtue of its direction, by virtue of how it is visually represented in quadrants of yellow and red and black and white, even that is consistent with Crazy Horse's prophecy, which he says, in that day, the day of the seventh generation, I see a time when all of the colors of man will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one again. That is the hope of the seventh generation. That's the destiny of the seventh generation. That is why we are here. And I'm really finding it quite amusing and fulfilling to me to see that, for the most part, our fellowship and our congregation is made up of older people. And we can have to argue that maybe along with age comes a little wisdom and maybe comes a little maturity. The prophecy also goes on to say that in that day, which is this day, there will be those among our people who carry knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the unity of how all of this fits together. And the young ones will come to those of our people and ask for this wisdom. What I'm finding amusing and quite exciting to me is, in many ways, we can look at us that we are, as we are approaching our elder years, we are stepping into that role when in that day there will be those of my people who carry wisdom and knowledge of the medicine way, of the medicine wheel, of the walk and the way of the good red road. And so we're training up that generation of elders, and we're being supported by a beautiful couple in their youth. So both of those prophecies are being fulfilled among us as we speak. We're attracting and we're bringing in the elders who share and have and carry this knowledge and wisdom of how things work when we begin and make a decision that we're going to discard all the old paradigms and all of the beliefs, and we're going to step boldly into the season of the East and begin again. And we can do that anywhere, and we can do that at any time. I felt like that this layout is really necessary as we're going to build a foundation of how all of this works, and just as an overview. So even, for example, let's take what we're teaching today. Where is this coming from? It's coming from the East. It's coming, as new material and new information. We're being informed of the possibility of a new way of life and living. And it's all represented right here. Now, today, where we are, so far as the seven sacred teachings are concerned, we're still in that season of the East. So what, maybe kind of like, I suppose, in the way that the Catholics give up something for the season of Lent. We've come here in our own season of surrender and emptying out, removing the old ways, removing the old thoughts, removing the old paradigms, the things that no longer serve us well, nurture us, or influences our happiness in a good way. So right now, we're all in the season of the East, regardless of what your age is, regardless of what's going on in your life. Physically, this is where we are planted now in our Medicine Way journey. We're in the season of the East. This is the first of the 7 sacred teachings, which is humility. Everything new has to be started on the sacred need of humility. And we could talk a lot about that, and we're going to talk a lot about that. The purpose of this engagement, of these presentations, is going to be able to dig deeper. But unless we have, an elementary, fundamental understanding of the program and the process, none of this other stuff will make sense to us. But you have to begin to see just right now where we are, stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, in the universal sense of where things are located for us right now. Again, as I said earlier, we're in a very small slice of the East. And this is where we begin as a newborn. The newborn knows nothing but need and comfort. If it soils its diaper, it's going to let you know by its cry. If it's hungry, thirsty, they're going to let you know by their cry. And so even as we approach Creator and our relationship with Creator, we're doing that in the quadrant of the East. It's pretty much imperative that we're going to understand this journey this way, and to be able to talk about it in an informed manner. This card, the mini brochure here, is a great tool, but I'm hopeful that we can get to the place where we feel confident that we can talk about it. Well, tell me more about what you believe. Tell me more about what what you practice and how. Well, our beliefs are right here on the back of the card, and the prophecy is right here in the middle. And if you step back and think about it, everything that is happening on the 4 pages of this card is happening for us right now. Season of newness, a season of new beginnings, a season of rebirth. So everything that's going to end one way or the other, either on a good way or a not so good way, begins in the season of the East, and the teaching that is attached to that is humility. Time of, people ask me, well, what do you think about when you see or you think about or talk about humility? Very simple. It's the absence of pride, the absence of our ego. This is when we, like that child, after about 3 years, mama's going to get tired of changing its diaper and say, can't you figure this out for yourself? So everything begins as an emptying out. Sometimes something has to die in order to be born again. And that does not necessarily imply that that's on a physical plane or a physical stage. It just, it's a matter of spirituality is where we are. So in this season of our life, we want to be looking more inward. We need to be in a place of introspection where we begin to investigate the things and the affairs of our soul, our heart, our breath, our words, our deeds, our actions, how all that integrates with one another, and how it all integrates and comes together in that centeredness, where and then again we will all be one. So again, your Western philosophy is going to be more of a linear stage. It starts here and it ends over here. But if you notice everything being in a circle, while we can argue that there is a point of entry, which is in the East, it's also fluid and it's also moving and it also brings us back and gives us new opportunities to start again, to be forgiven for the wrongs that we've done or the thoughts about ourselves or other people that don't have good seeds. At any time, we can step back and evaluate ourselves and what's going on in our life and how the energy is playing out with our engagement and involvement with people in the world and say, wow, I need to become more humble. Because as long as we're caught up in our egos, and right now, from almost every place and posture in the planet Earth, from politics to religion, it's like a popcorn mentality. It's just stuff going off, in the popcorn cooker of our mind, and who knows what's going to pop next, right? And then lands on the do part of our thinking. Well, we always have to keep ourselves checked and make sure when we talk about coming in a good way, we come having bowed and taken a sacred knee of humility. And we realize with gratitude, as a child does in his early developments, that the world does not exist for me. I'm not the only person on this page. I'm not the only person who's in this party. And by that realization, it teaches us also, as all of us come together in a way that begins with humility, checking our ego, coming to realize that we all really exist to serve one another. No one needs to serve me or you or we exist to serve each other. That's a part of the native mind. That everything we do is that we do in the blessing and the support and the care for not only of 7 generations down the road, but with the family that defines itself as ours. And we engage with humility. We all have our own gifts. We all have our own strengths. We all have our own abilities. We all have our bank accounts. And it's how we choose to use those things that matters the most, not how much money anybody has in their checking account or any of that stuff. It's where we just separate from all that and come into that inner circle and focus our journey with the commitment and the determination that we're going to finish at that place within. That's a place of pure love, unbiased, unprejudiced, unconditional. Love was just created and intended to be as it was in the beginning. And when you think about it, we have the opportunity to experience that. And it's not something that we're going to have to wait for. We can experience it right here, right now, today. And so as we're going to be walking through the 7 sacred teachings and explore all of them more deeply, the first thing that I want you to understand is all of these things, the teachings, the colors, the direction, the intention of the placement of the 7 sacred teachings with the 7 directions, it all fits together like a big puzzle. And when you begin to see, you might begin to even see it like you might look through an atomic microscope and see all that stuff just moving and sparkling around down. And so it is with our lives. And these teachings are going to give us a good opportunity to evaluate where we are, how we're doing, what we need to adjust, what we need to change. And given the opportunity and the realization, by virtue of it being a wheel, it can start again at any moment. That's the beauty of it. No matter how broken we may be, no matter the life that we've lived or the past that we've experienced, what we've done that we shouldn't have done, what we've done in which we should have probably not lived out of it. We've all had those things. That's humility. So I say this in kind of a joking way. People ask me sometimes, what is humility to you? And I say it's the realization that I ain't all that. And that's what it comes down to. But that doesn't establish a position or place of hierarchy. It just puts us in the place and the position of evaluating this divine and sacred circle that we call life. And we don't have to be a doormat. We don't have to be a whipping post. We don't have to be used and abused or taken advantage of to show our humility. That's not what humility is about. And I think I just pretty much defined it the best way we can to realize that I ain't all that. Robert Pullen, my friend down at the Southeastern Muskogee Nation, who is our maker of medicine. Some of you've met him. He's been with us before. There are three of us in the medicine way of the tribe. There's me, there's Robert Pullen, and there's a guy by the name of John Winterhawk. John was going to come and participate at the ceremony a couple of weeks ago down in Hartwell, but he's not in very good health right now. But the point of it is, we all three of us know that John's got an issue with the ego. And we laugh about it. John doesn't deny it. He'll let you know straight up he wants to be the star of the show. And Robert Pullen, if you've met him and you remember how he talked, in the conversation, he looked at John and said, "John, you just want to become an important Indian. That's what you want. You want to become an important Indian." So when I talked to Robert after the thing that we did in Hartford, he says, "Robert, sounds like you about to become an important Indian." Well, I don't have any desire or interest in becoming important, because that's what humility means. It's that realization that I ain't all that, but I'm something. Remember the old Western we used to watch growing up? I know this predates you, but it's a good thing to remember and tuck in your toolbox, because it's a good way to tell a story sometime. Back in the old days, most of the movies or cartoons were all about Western stuff, cowboys and Indians. The good guy and the bad guy. And if you can remember one of the scenes, it would look kind of like this, that the bad guy has abducted the pretty little girl who's the heart of the town and wants her all for his own, but realizes the only way he can do that is tie her up to the railroad track and let the train run over her, right? And we can all remember that in our memory, how those scenes are just da 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 da. Here comes the train faster, and she's over there screaming, and here comes the guy finally to rescue her and cut the knots and set her free. And she says, Thank you, sir. And the cowboy says, shucks, ma'am, it weren't nothing. But you know the strange irony of that, it is something. You know, when we can save somebody's life, when we can influence their journey in a good way, that is something. And we need to, and we will find our way through how to do that as we study this way in the order of the teachings and the colors and the whole presentation of the medicine wheel, that we'll begin to see where our purpose and our abilities will fit into that thing, that bigger picture, where we can, in fact, make a difference in this world. And that is relatives of the seventh generation, is what we are called to do, our destiny. So I look forward to getting deeper into these topics and these thoughts with you. And sometime from now, we'll have a big celebration where we all meet in the middle. And that is that place where Crazy Horse said, then and there we shall be as one. I'm excited to share that journey with you. And I think it's going to be a good time this season as we're kind of finding ourselves in a place of um, understanding who we are in a new way. And I'm just really excited to see what's going to happen and how we're going to develop in our movement forward. Always like to give you examples of something that I know maybe most all of you have seen. I may have mentioned this before, but have you ever seen the movie The Field of Dreams? Anyone ever seen that movie? Most of us have. It's a good movie. Well, after all of the synopsis and all of the story together, it comes down to whether a fellow who heard some voices in the wind telling him to build a baseball field. If you build it, they will come. So he built it, and the people weren't coming. And he was about to lose the farm, ball field, everything. And he kept hearing that voice saying, if you build it, they will come. But along the way, they attract a fellow by the name of Thomas Mann, who's kind of a philosopher, historian kind of guy. And he's connected into this story because of his relationship with baseball. So they come out, and the final scene is that the players who came, they're ghost players, but they look real, come in, play a game, walk off into the cornfield and just disappear. And the last scene is that one of the baseball players invites Terrence Mann to come with them. He thinks about it a minute. He kind of does that classic James Earl Jones chuckle. And he walks out to the edge of the cornfield and sticks his hand in. I'm sure I've told you this before. And his hand just disappears. He jerks it back. Again, starts laughing and chuckling. He's got the attention of all the folks sitting in the stands. And this time he reaches in a little farther and half of his body disappears. And he just jumps back, just filled with laughter. And Ray, his friend who built the baseball field, said, what's it look like out there, Ray? I mean, Terrence, what's it look like out there? And he begins to walk into the cornfield and just disappears as he's saying, I don't know. I can't wait to find out. And I think that's where we are on our journey together. There's good things happening, good opportunities developing for us as a community, as a church family, as a witness and influence to the people in our community. And I don't know where it's going to end. I don't know where it's all going to go, but I can't wait to find out. But I do know this, that it has to begin on the sacred knee of humility. So let us then bring those thoughts and our attention then to our space at the altar. Even the way in which our altar is arranged and the sacraments that we have and that we use for this time of prayer, from the tobacco, the sage, the sweetgrass, the floral water, all of the things that connect us with the natural world and the heart and the fragrance of the sacred Mother Earth. We obviously cannot have a fire in here, so we use a charcoal. And I deeply apologize to those like Donna has an issue with the smoke, and I've had that frequently, through this journey, and I don't really know how we can do this without the things that we do with it. And part of that is going to involve smoke. So do what you need to do to be as comfortable as you need to be. And know that, there's not going to be any judgment or anything. Wonder why they didn't do this, that, or the other. And, you do what you need to do to maintain and protect your own individual health. But, tobacco has such a special role and place in our ceremonies. And as we present the altar and the flow of the altar, we start by using a very fragrant water called floral water, Florida water, some people call it. And this has been ceremonially used in some form, shape, or fashion. As we think about coming to our place of prayer, especially given the thoughts and the ideas of humility, we want to release and be free from all of the things that hold us back and prevents us, for whatever reason, to our pursuing our passion and living our destination. So we think about those things that hold us down and hold us back. And we use the charcoal to sprinkle a pinch of tobacco as an act of our surrender, as of our physical letting go of things. And then through hope, we come to make a new prayer for ourselves. And Paula, if you feel inclined or would like to come to the altar today and make a good prayer for yourself, please feel this open to everybody. No matter if you've been here a long time or today is your first day. And we have, our relatives here that are here to help you answer any questions, and you can, just walk through the process of our experience at the altar if you desire, and someone will be delighted to help you and keep you centered on what we're doing here. Basically, we start with cleansing ourselves, letting ourselves go, freeing ourselves from all that holds us down and holds us back. And then we can stand and move in a good way with our prayer to make a new prayer for ourselves in alignment with the seven sacred teachings. And today our thoughts fall on humility. So let us be mindful of these things as we come to the altar today. So let's come together. us.